Welcome back to another episode of the Aquademia podcast. I'm your host, Justin Grant.
And I'm Maddie Cassidy.
And we, Maddie, have made it to the conclusion of 2024.
I can't believe another year in the books for the Aquademia podcast. Today we're coming at you live, not necessarily live for us, not for you, but we're coming at you, just Justin and I, no guests today, and we're going to be bringing you our 6th annual Aquademia's Year in Review episode. This is always one of my favorite episodes of the year because it's a nice chance for us to look back at all that we accomplished as a community with you, our listeners, this year. And if you're curious to look back on past Year in Review episodes, those will all be linked in the show notes.
I was just going to say, I really like this episode because the logistics are so much simpler. I just plug in my laptop. Everything's recorded through one program, and then you go and say, I'm going to link all of the past end of year episodes in the show notes. So thanks. Just added an extra 30 seconds to my workflow.
You know, I have to add it in somewhere.
No, I think it's handy for our listeners. And we have been running a lot of analytics on which episodes have been popular. And to Maddie's point, this is our 6th annual end of year episode, which means we have been running strong for a very, very long time. And we have a lot of episodes, and some of those numbers will run by you in this specific episode. But to that point, when I'm looking at the analytics, there have been people who have been listening to a lot of our episodes are evergreen, and we do that on purpose. Some aren't. So, if you look back at some of our Summit Conference episodes, people have been still listening to those, even though those events have actually passed. But some of the content that's in there is still kind of exciting and neat to listen to. But we're still getting downloads on a lot of those episodes, which is interesting. All right. Are you ready to do this?
Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Aquademia podcast.
Our diet is hurting the environment in myriad ways. I mean, we desperately need to eat more seafood.
This is a pioneering industry with a whole lot of people who have really good ideas and a lot of experience and are unafraid.
Aquademia is your go-to podcast for a fresh take on all things seafood.
All right. So Maddie did mention this is our 6th annual end of the year episode. So crazy.
Pretty exciting. And going off of that, that means that this year, 2024, we celebrated our 5-year anniversary of when we launched the podcast. That happened in March 2019 at Seafood Expo North America. We had a whole launch party. A bunch of people came to our booth at the exhibit, and it was us dipping our toe into a world that we really didn't realize the journey that this would take us on. I don't think that I would have guessed that we would still be doing this 5 years later.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Sean at the time, who kicked this whole podcast idea off, he jumped through a lot of hoops, he got it approved, and we hit the ground running. Maddie and I sat around a round table with Sean. We were probably a little bit nervous.
Hours.
And we didn't know how do we have natural banter over the microphones? How do we interact with guests and do all this stuff? And now, we're seasoned pros. We come into the studio, whether with a live guest or a virtual guest, and we put on the headphones and we're prepped and we're ready to go. And that's been years in the making. And it's just really exciting to see. Really, we've built a library or an encyclopedia of episodes that, because most of our episodes are evergreen, we allow people to use this as a seafood reference, depending on what it is you're looking for. This is definitely a place people can go to get information on a ton of different topics and ideas. All right. So I did mention that we have released a lot of episodes, and we're going to tell you how many episodes. You could find this on your own, but you don't need to, because I'm going to tell you right now. We have this episode we are recording right now is going to be episode number 251.
Wow.
Now, Maddie and I weren't on all 251. We are on most of them.
Definitely the vast majority.
So that's just crazy to think that we have released that many episodes and you and I have had our voice publicly spewed throughout Earth that many times.
And it's really cool to think. So most of our episodes range from half an hour to an hour long. So the amount of minutes that you and I have been able to listen to and pick the brains of experts in the seafood industry is such a unique experience, and it's really special that we get to share it with our audience, because I know that I've learned so much as someone who was not from the seafood industry before this podcast. And I just hope that our listeners have gotten as much out of all of these episodes as I have.
I know I also didn't come from a seafood background when I joined GAA at the time, now GSA. Obviously, I had the skill set in education and graphic design and a lot of tricks up my sleeve that have been useful here. But I feel like when we attend events, whether that's Seafood Expo North America, SEG in Barcelona, or our summit conference, we now meet so many people for the second time or third time, and I'm really starting to understand the industry a lot better, and it's been an exciting journey.
So when Justin and I were reflecting on how we've released 250 episodes, I decided to do a little research and see how many podcasts released that many episodes, because a lot of the time you hear about podcasts hardly even make it to 10 episodes. So it turns out that less than 1% of podcasts release 250 episodes. So we're in a kind of the Hall of Fame, I have to say, for podcasts for releasing that many episodes. So I'm really proud of all of the work that the two of us and Sean have put into this podcast over the years.
Yeah, I think, not to spend too much time on that specific stat, but I think what happens with new podcasts, you get really excited, and then the editing process is kind of fun at first, and then you realize, okay, takes a lot of work, right? And then there's a lot of planning that goes into episodes. In some cases, you need financial backing. We've had the support of GSA to keep this product going. So kudos to everyone that's behind the scenes that's allowing us to do this again in 2025. And for the editing process, I still find it really enjoyable. And there's a lot of times that I'll listen to myself and say, oh, I can edit that out, and people don't know how silly I sound sometimes. So that's great.
And 2024 was definitely a different year for the podcast. So for the first time, we pivoted to a monthly release schedule. So this is our 12th episode of the year. In the past, we've done weekly episodes, bi-weekly, more than 4 episodes a month even at some points. So this year we pivoted to do just 1 episode a month. And it seems like our listeners have still enjoyed that release schedule, because we're able to ensure that every episode is of super high quality with an amazing guest for you to listen to.
Speaking of guests, so another total we would like to bring to people's attention is how many guests did we have this year? That total was 14. Now that's obviously significantly lower than last year when Aquademia released an episode every week. That brings our total guest total. Edit that out, Justin. 188 total guests all time.
That's pretty amazing. We're almost at 200. That's going to be a really special milestone. That's not necessarily a milestone that I think about a lot, but 188 different people have been on our show and shared their knowledge with us. It's just really cool to think about.
So we did hit some milestones this year, some of which we'll get into on this episode. But I do think a 2025 milestone is probably going to be breaking that 200 different guest total.
Definitely.
All right, 2024 stats. Let's jump into some of these bullet points that we got here. All right. So again, to Maddie's point, we only released 12 episodes this year. That includes the one we're recording right now. With that decrease, we were interested to see how our statistics would actually look compared to last year when there was a lot more episodes going out. So here's some positive stats for everyone. And most of them, if not all of them, were actually positive, which some of it was really shocking. So the first one is 170% increase in downloads per episode over the previous year.
That's a really substantial increase, which we honestly were not expecting going to a less frequent release schedule. Mm-hmm. So hearing that our listeners are still super engaged, like you guys still listen to every episode, you don't miss a single one, it's really positive for us to see, and it gives us the fuel to continue the podcast into 2025, which we're really excited to do.
Mm-hmm. So not a numbers based, but well, actually, what am I saying? Not a numbers based. This is, of course, a numbers based. So we did look at what our average episode length was in 2024, and that was 38 minutes.
Seems pretty accurate.
Right.
I mean, it has to be if it's our average.
And I know we try to, we've had long episodes, we've had shorter episodes. This one we anticipated would be a much shorter episode, but given how much we have to get through, and we've already been recording for 10 minutes.
The two of us can really talk, in case you didn't realize.
That's why we're still on the show, right?
And another exciting thing that we started this year is we want to really focus on listener engagement and helping you all feel like you really are a part of the podcast. So we started our first listener survey series, which we did our first episode of that in March, and then we're doing another one in this episode, and there'll be more of that to come next year. So stay tuned to our social media, our email list, if you want to participate in future surveys.
And next stat is unique listeners, which is always I think, a valuable statistic to analyze when we kind of look at how the show is performing. I think we have a good grasp of what our subscribers look like, what that rough number is. But unique listeners, I think, is really important because it's who's new, who is coming in, and in some cases staying or subscribing. So when we compare 2023 to 2024, 2024 outperformed by over 3 times the unique listeners per episode. That
really goes to show that our audience has grown this year, which we didn't, like I said, we didn't expect that would happen. Mm-hmm. So it's another tick towards we're heading in the right direction with the content that we're putting out and the topics that we're covering. Mm-hmm. So one thing that we like to look at every year, which shockingly shifts a lot year to year, is where our listeners are coming from. So in the past, we usually do top 10 countdown of the top countries that our listeners are based in. This year, we're just going to be doing a top 5, and the results were really crazy. I feel like I say that every year, but this year they were noticeably different.
Right. So I'm going to do the count. We're going to go backwards. So we're going to start with number 5.
Got to build the suspense.
Yeah, right. Although most people probably can guess number 1. Oh, there goes the suspense. All right. Number 5, India.
Which that one was in our top 10 last year, but definitely not top 5. So India moved up.
Number 4, China.
That has never been, not even in our top 10 before. So huge jump in Chinese listeners, which is super interesting this year.
Mm-hmm. Number 3, Japan.
This one is also a huge rising star in the ranks of our listener countries. So last year, I think it was like towards the bottom of our top 10, but it really shot up this year, which is, it makes sense because we did a country spotlight episode with Koda Shibai, who's one of our coworkers here at Global Seafood Alliance. Yep. So it's really cool to see that our country spotlight really made an impact in Japan, and maybe some listeners tuned into that and stayed on.
Right. Number 2, Canada. Was Canada number 2 last year?
It was.
Okay.
Number 2 last year as well.
And no shock to me and probably our listeners, but the United States reigns in at number 1 by a significant margin, which
it's nice to see that there's 3 of the top 5 countries are not primarily English-speaking countries. So I love to see that our listeners are still getting a lot out of the podcast, even if English isn't their first language.
Right.
So the next thing that we'll talk about is what was our top episode of 2024. So what is a top episode? That means it is our most downloaded episode, usually the episode that people listen to for the longest percentage of the episode. So Justin, what was our top episode?
That was episode 240, The Important Work of Uplifting Small-Scale Seafood Producers. And that was with our own GSA star, Bill Honig.
That was a really fun episode. Bill is someone who can talk forever. He knows so much about the seafood industry, and he also interacts with a lot of small-scale producers in his work in Latin America. So that was a great episode.
Yeah, and we're going to have to shoot him an email and let him know that we gave him another shout-out on the end-of-year episodes. I'm sure
he's going to love that.
Yep. All right. So to Maddie's point again, which I feel like I say that a lot during our episodes.
I just make a lot of great points.
Yeah. So we did another survey. We want to go over some of those results with you. And I do think we want to do more of this, or at least the same, next year. We're going to stick, in 2025, we're going to stick to the same one episode a month. We did survey our audience to try to get a sense of what worked this year, what didn't work this year, what people want to see more of, less of, and so forth. We use those results to guide our planning for next year. And I think the consensus was people like what we're doing. And if anything, people would give us suggestions of, hey, here's a topic that I would like you to try to focus on next year if you can fit it in. So let's start with poll question number 1, which was, which topic cluster is most interesting to you? So I'll read what they were, and then I'll give their percentage. So we had seafood innovations, seafood career pathways, species spotlights, and seafood company spotlights. So those are the bulk of our series or our categories, and for the most part the percentages were kind of close, which is good. There was a clear winner, which was seafood innovations, and that's Justin's favorite. Right. Any of our subscribers to the podcast know that those are my favorite types of episodes. So 51% seafood innovations, 29% seafood career pathways. Those are also fun to do. Yeah, those are always really interesting to listen to for me as also a listener of the podcast, because as someone who's pretty early on in their career, it's just really refreshing to hear that careers aren't always linear. There's changes, there's forks in the road, there's decisions you have to make to progress. So it's always nice to get that reassurance, like you're always on the right path at the end of the day. All right. Coming in at number 3 was species spotlights, which was 14%, which was a shock to me a little bit. I feel like that used to be a lot more popular, but maybe we've covered a lot of the basics. So people want to hear more about innovations and career pathways. Although we did get some feedback on some species that we haven't covered that people want to hear about. Yes. And some of them I was like, oh, why haven't we thought about that yet? So true. And then seafood company spotlights, 6%. All right, so moving on, the next poll question was one that was more for Justin and I's knowledge and planning out our topics that we're going to cover in 2025. Mm-hmm. And this question was, would you listen to GSA-focused episodes? So episodes like that are usually the ones that are about the Responsible Seafood Summit or specific initiatives that GSA has undertaken, right? Going over the results of different projects. And 62% of people said yes, they would listen to those, and 38% of people said no, not my thing. So something to consider for next year. Right, and I think we have some ideas. We know of, what is the word I'm looking for? There have been some significant developments, a new standard, Seafood Processing Standard 6.0. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of our listeners that are in the space and understand certification and standards know what I'm talking about, and we've always tried to avoid talking about ourselves, right? This is about the industry. So we're exploring the idea of what that would look like and trying to get a sense would our listeners listen to episodes like that. So I do think there will be at least one episode next year that will be different in that regard, that will probably bring on an internal expert that knows a lot about whatever that initiative is that GSA is taking on. And we'll kind of see how that episode how the analytics of that episode look to decide if that's something we want to continue with or if we want to continue with our current approach. All right, next question was, what new topics do you want to hear from us? What do you want us to talk about? So we just kind of highlighted some of the consistencies. So it looks like salmon. People want more salmon, processing, production. I mean, that is a huge industry. We know that. Mm-hmm. And we've done several episodes on salmon, I believe. But I feel like salmon is usually a hot topic, so there's definitely more that we can dig into with the salmon industry. Right. Let's see. More on sustainable fish farming practices. Love to hear that. Couldn't agree more. Yep. Interesting. Career pathways. Yes. Came up. Yep. And this one is interesting, so we put it on here. New developments in the reproduction and breeding of aquatic animals. Yeah, that one's interesting to me too. I feel like we haven't really done many episodes about the hatchery level of
aquaculture. So maybe that's a topic that we can look into for next year.
And that wasn't, that was unique, which means there is one person who wrote that in. We thought it was interesting, so we shared it on the show. Hopefully the person who filled that out is a listener to Aquademia. I would assume they are. So reach out to us, whoever you are, and give us some more information and maybe some guidance on how you would like to potentially shape an episode like that, and we can see what we can do.
So these survey questions were on the Global Seafood Alliance LinkedIn page and also the Global Seafood Alliance Instagram page. So if you want to participate in future surveys, be sure to follow us on both of those platforms and you can participate.
Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to add, which was another question, which was if you could change one thing about the podcast, what would it be? Many of our responses were more of suggestions. And so I'm just going to read one, which was adding a species spotlight of caviar.
Really interesting.
And I haven't thought about that. So that would be
neither.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I would personally want to learn more about
And
that.
I think we've talked about it a little bit.
We've definitely mentioned it.
Right. So I think we just need to go into some further detail if that would be a fit for 2025. All right. So really one of the last things that we like to talk about is our reflection of 2024 and the podcast. And one of the things that we always do on these episodes is looking back at some of the episodes that inspired us or stuck with us throughout the year. Maddie, do you have an episode that stands out?
One that stands out to me that I keep going back to, and it, like you said, it just sticks with me. And that is episode 248, Whole Fish, Whole Future in the Great Lakes with David Naftsker. And that was a continuation of kind of a mini series that we've done on 100% utilization of fish, which is a topic that I personally am really interested in. And usually when you hear about 100% fish, it's not based in the US, it's usually in Europe or other places. So it was really cool to hear about this initiative that's happening sort of in our backyard, not too far away in the Great Lakes of the United States. And David was such a pleasure to have on. He has an extremely deep set of knowledge about so many different things. And it was just really, he's just a great, interesting person to talk to. So that episode really stands out to me. How about you?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of, every episode was memorable because we didn't release 62 like we did last year.
Yes,
so it's really easy to go back and say, oh, I 100% remember that episode. I remember the flow. I remember the edits. That was a little bit more difficult when we were doing an episode every week. So they all stood out and they all had they were all unique in their own special way. And I'm very biased on what my choice was for for this year, because I had this idea at the end of 2023 to involve our listeners more. And we just talked about this with the listener survey. So our first one that we did in 2024 was episode 242 back in March with Sherry Clark. And that was our Aquademia listener survey. And I don't listen to that many podcasts, but when I do listen to podcasts and their approach is, whether it's reading a review or some interaction that makes you feel part of the show, right? Anyone that's been listening to us for 5 years probably knows our personalities and they know what to expect. But then there's this added layer when you hear your question read, or you knew that you were a part of this survey, and it makes you feel involved. And that's what I was trying to get out of that idea. And I thought we got enough responses to validate doing it again. And hopefully it takes off even more next year. We'll try to make sure to, whenever we're going to do a listener survey, we're going to make sure to market it well enough and give it enough time to get the amount of results or submissions that we want to make sure that it's valuable to then record an episode about it. So that was my favorite. And yes, it's a little biased.
It's a great idea. It's one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to. It's purely just listener stories. So listeners send in stories and then the podcast host read them and comment on them. And I always love those episodes. So I think it's a great idea and it's something that we should be doing more of.
Did you just give us an idea for 2025?
Listener stories. Like mini career pathways or something like that.
But they could submit, we could have guidelines, like submit X amount of a word count of blank and tell us your
Like
experience with
your craziest experience on the job or something like that.
Oh, and then at the end of episodes, we could say we got the submission from First Name Only, from blank, and here's a story.
Wow, you're listening to an idea come. This is what Justin and I's meetings are like, an idea coming to life in real time. We should definitely do that.
It's like the giant, you know how you have the sticky notes that are really tiny that you have on your desk? And then we have the giant ones that you can put on the wall, and then it's just you and I with huge Sharpies that we're just scribbling all sorts of ideas.
Just writing crazy ideas all over it. Yeah, pretty much. The one last thing that I want to say is a huge thank you to each and every one of you that are listening to this episode and any other episode. I feel like I have to say this in every end of year review episode, but we truly could not continue doing this podcast if it weren't for our listeners. So we thank you so much for your support, your engagement, especially on a year where we were releasing less episodes.
Right. Yeah, I don't really have much to piggyback off of that comment, except everything you said is 100% true. If we didn't have the analytics that we had or have, if we didn't show growth or value, then I'm not sure how long we would be able to continue with this. And it's because of listeners like all of you that allow us to continue doing this. And we appreciate every single one of you. So thank you for being a listener of Aquademia. I hope all of you have a wonderful and safe New Year's.
And we look forward to continuing all of this work into 2025. We've got a bunch of cool topics lined up for next year, a bunch of great guests. So thank you for the support, and we hope that you enjoy what we bring next year.
Right. And if anything that we mention sparks an idea that you have for us, we have an online form, and we check that all the time. So if you want to reach out to Aquademia for any reason, you can do so by filling out that online form located at globalseafood.org/podcast.
And I have to say this, but I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this episode, you're probably a subscriber. But on the off chance that you're not, make sure that you subscribe to Aquademia on whichever podcast platform you listen to us on and leave a rating or review for us.
And also follow us on X at Aquademia Pod. Forgot to mention that, but most of our subscribers already know that as well.
Well, thank you for a fantastic 2024, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year.
And Maddie, thank you so much for all your hard work this year, and sitting next to me and helping this thing continue to breathe life.
Likewise, you're the best.
Ciao.
Bye.